Section 314 would reduce the military budget to 2005 spending levels over a period of 4 years. And it would do this by requiring a 10% cut in the military budget each year for 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. It seems like the military budget it keeps going up, and we just ended the war in Afghanistan. Why is it that we're continuing to spend more and more money, passing the largest defense spending bill in world history? I want to try and pull up this chart. All right, so this is U.S. military spending over the last decades. And you can see that we've grown from 1991, 1992, $325 billion during the first Iraq War. It continued to escalate starting in 2002, 2001 with the War on Terror, and continued to escalate up until 2011, when under President Obama, the war in Iraq was ended. And then for a number of years, we had some decreases in the military budget. And in 2017, under President Trump, it started to go back up. And President Biden has continued that path. And so I'll bring up one more chart here. This is what the Blueprint for a Better America would do. Congress projects its spending 10 years in advance, and they pass a resolution saying that the House and Senate have agreed on it. That's the current one is Senate Concurrent Resolution 14. And they've agreed to plan for a 2% increase in the military budget going forward. The Blueprint for a Better America would change that, so to a 10% cut. And so each year, 10% of waste, 10% of excessive expenditures, 10% of whatever, of all sorts of things could be cut by 10%. And this would save $826 billion in military spending over 4 years. There's groups that call for larger cuts to the military, and pathetic, but 10% cut, any organization can find 10% to cut, especially one whose budget has grown so significantly over the last 20 years. This language again comes from proposed amendments to the National Defense Authorization Acts. Percent cut in the military budget isn't a reasonable amount to cut. It's a reasonable amount to redirect back towards other priorities that America has. We're spending $750 billion on the military, and that amount of money could be better used at other places, many places back here in the United States. We'll talk about in the next section. We have a huge military footprint around the world with some 750 military bases. As we start to close those down, there'll be large opportunities for savings. This is one of the precise reasons that the framers were concerned about standing armies, because of the large expense of maintaining. The United States, its military budget is more than at least the next 10 largest countries combined. That total number keeps going up every year. I lose track, but it's at least the next 10 largest countries combined. And so by putting this into law, mandating a 10% cut in the military for the next 4 years, Congress will have to start making some difficult choices. But you can look at a lot of the things that we do spend our money on, like the money, again, like we've talked about ending the 1033 program, where military surplus gets given away to police departments. Let's stop buying that equipment. Let's cut our spending that way. Now, the obvious question is, what happens if it comes up and Congress needs to exceed this? And so subsection E is the loophole that allows that. And it allows the House and the Senate to consider an amendment to these restrictions with a 2/3 vote. requires that it be a roll call vote so that we can see exactly how our members stood on this issue. If 2/3 of Congress agrees that there is a need to exceed the restrictions in this section, that's the way that they can do it, through a supermajority. And one of the reasons that this is the third plank of the Blueprint for a Better America is because we're trying to address Dr. King's triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. And when he was alive, he spoke out against the war in Vietnam, that it was the militarism that ate up so much of the budget. And so I'd like to read just a little bit from his Beyond Vietnam speech that he gave 1 year before he was assassinated. And he said, "A true revolution of values will lay hand on the world order and say of war, this way of settling differences is not just. This business of burning human beings with napalm, of filling our nation's homes with orphans and widows, of injecting poisonous drugs of hate into the veins of peoples normally humane, of sending men home from dark and bloody battlefields, physically handicapped and psychologically deranged, cannot be reconciled with wisdom, justice, and love. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. America, the richest and most powerful nation in the world, can well lead the way in this revolution of values. There is nothing except a tragic death wish to prevent us from reordering our priorities so that the pursuit of peace will take precedence over the pursuit of war." That's the radical revolution of values that we should be undertaking as we come out of the pandemic, is using wisdom, justice, and love to reorder our national priorities, to spend more on programs of social uplift instead of military defense. We can do this by adopting the Blueprint for a Better America. And with that, Mixed Chair, I think that concludes my testimony for Section 314, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, I have a few questions. Number one, how does this fit in with the ongoing annual auditing that is happening with the Department of Defense?
I don't think it's connected to the annual auditing. This is strictly a cap on the amount of money that can be authorized for the military budget.
Thank you. And why you'd mentioned that there are groups who call for more drastic cutting. Why 2005 levels? Why stop there? Why not a lower or larger amount? And as well as a follow-up of what about after? What happens after if it's only over 4 years?
No, those are all good questions. And the short answer is we have to start somewhere. And so this is a place to start by putting 4 years into this legislative package. That gives us enough time to see. It doesn't immediately put it up for debate again in the next election. It pushes it to the next midterm elections. It gives us a chance to see how things are going, then reevaluate when we have more data. So that's the 4 years. What do we do after that? I guess in large part, it will depend on the state of the country and the state of the world. And, if we've decided as a nation that we want to be committed to peace and justice instead of using military force, we can certainly continue taking this in the direction of reducing the military even further. But 4 years is a good amount of time to collect data and then reevaluate. As far as 10%, and 10% is a reasonable cut. It's hard to argue and say that the military can't possibly cut 10%, given their $750 billion budget. And you asked why 2005 spending levels, and that's just where it worked out. This takes us down to $500 and something billion would be the amount authorized in 2026, which is about what we spent in 2005. Difference being in 2005, they did it in they did it in a couple different sections. Defense authorization was sort of like their normal baseline budget. And then they passed a supplemental appropriation for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan because they pretended that those were surprises and couldn't possibly have been budgeted for. But they spent about $530 billion in that year. And so we can get back down to that level again now, especially now that we've ended the war in Afghanistan.